At this time, I will call to order the Stillwater Economic Development Authority meeting for January 9th, 2023. We have one item on the consent docket. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve the consent docket.
Second.
Motion second to approve consent. Please vote. Consent's approved with a vote of 5-0. General orders. Item 5A. Consider Stillwater Reinvestment Plan Downtown Campus Link Project Plan Implementation Policy Committee's recommendation regarding the Progressive Development LLC's request for assistance in development financing for property located at 923 South Main pursuant to the reinvestment plan. And Mr. Brady Moore.
Good evening, trustees. Brady Moore on behalf of the City Manager's Office. And tonight we're excited to bring to you another TIF project from our Downtown Campus Link. Corey Williams, the owner of Progressive Development Corporation LLC, is the developer for this project. He is here tonight, and before I have him come up here and speak to you about the redevelopment, I'll quickly go over a few of the project details and the recommendation from the Citizen Implementation Committee. The project is a complete redevelopment of the 7,000 square foot building at 923 South Main Street, along with a new 1,000 square foot outdoor dining space. The tenants for this project will be two new businesses to Stillwater, a popular restaurant that began in Automobile Alley of Oklahoma City, and that's Hatch. Early Mood Food is their tagline, and then also becoming kind of a nationally known little bakery, Roundhouse Bakery is considering relocating to Stillwater. The purchase price of the building was $355,000 in 2022. Estimated renovation expenses of $2.75 million and furniture and fixtures of $500,000 for a total development cost of $3.6 million. On the application, the developer requested $525,000 in TIF assistance, this being a significant impact project. The TIF 3 Implementation Committee met on December 19th to hear this project, and the committee voted 6-0 in approval. Their recommendation was for the total amount of $525,000 to be paid in arrears, and to include 2% of the city's undedicated sales tax. I'll now invite Mr. Williams up here to tell you more about the project, and then I'll come back to answer any questions that you have and kind of look at financial projections.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. And Brady, thank you guys for having me here this evening. I'm glad to be back. I think before I get into the overall discussion regarding this particular building, I'll update you on some prior stuff. We received our CO for Stone Cloud back in June of this, I guess now last year, of 22. And my understanding, and I'll let you confirm with city staff, that it's exceeding expectations for the revenue projections that we brought to you once upon a time. So I'm pretty excited about that, and I'm excited about the reception it has received in the community. I was before you with another operator January, maybe February of this last year with regard to TXMZ, and that project is dead. I terminated the lease, and no city money was used, and luckily none of my money was used. So we are holding that building, and we are currently shopping it to other qualified operators, and we're pretty excited about some of the prospects that are associated with that. But it became clear to me that there was a substantial chance that city money would be involved, the developer's money would be involved, and the project may not get to completion because of some other commitments that the operator had. And having sat in a similar seat as y'all's and recognize the fiduciary duty, the last thing I want to do is have to come to you with egg on my face and say, we lost some of your money. And so I thought it was better that the operator and I part ways, and they agreed, and we have done so. So that building is back in the mix. And the good news is that because no city money was used, that money went back into the bowl or the account, whatever it might be. The hold has been released on it, and it is up for future development. So there's the update on what's going on. Now on to this. We're very excited. Acquired the old Uncle Mike space, or if you've been here long enough, you recognize it as Napa. Back before they built their building out on Perkins Road. Whenever I was a kid, which is the only time I went in that building, It was Napa, and we went in there a lot because we were always using duct tape and baling wire to hold our vehicles together, and they sold it pretty reasonable. But it is now, after demolition, a very beautiful building on the inside, and we're very excited about it. I get to stand in it and stare and see where all of the original windows were, where the original storefront was, and ironically, it started life as a hatchery. So I feel like it's almost coming full circle. It was the McConkey Hatchery way back in the day. And so it is as Brady said, a complete redevelopment of the building, really from the top up. The roof will be getting ripped off. We'll leave the original decking, but that's about the only thing that will stay. We'll do 4 inches of rigid foam insulation and a TPO roof, just like we did over at Stone Cloud. And then this building will get a solar field that goes all the way down the side of it. It is a 50 kW solar field. It is not enough to offset the entire footprint, but it is enough to do about 25 to 30%. I actually think it'll be higher because hatch is only open until about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So some of the load factor will be reduced, but we're pretty excited about that. And the tenants, we're super excited about it. Roundhouse Bakery, I can't say enough good things. If you haven't heard of them, please go to Stillwater Farmers Market and participate in some of their items. They do a fantastic job. They are nationally recognized. Kayla has done amazing things using very clean ingredients and very clean methodology. And I think that you've probably heard this before, but kind of the new outlet for retail is experiential retail. And Kayla is going to be bringing that to downtown Stillwater in this space where she will have a training facility attached to it. So not only for social gatherings, but for bringing in other chefs to train them in the methods that she's using. So we're excited about that. She ships cake boxes all over the U.S. Because her cakes are gorgeous and they're delectable. And they'll be doing actually a coffee service and an organic icy service and a whole bunch of different things there. Hatch is a provision concept. They're out of Oklahoma City, started by 2, I believe they were betas from OSU. And Jeff Dixon is the sole proprietor of that now. They own the concepts, Broadway 10, Hatch, Sidecar, Chickenfoot, Bira Bira. There's a Bandy's Barbecue and a couple others. And they just announced that they're opening a new Hatch, Broadway 10, and Sidecar in the Rose Creek redevelopment area. So we're excited to be bringing them to town. I think I have yet to be in a Hatch elsewhere and not seen somebody from Stillwater. And so my hope is that we'll be able to keep them here. Development costs are insane. And I want to address 2 things. First off, Stone Cloud would not be here but for the TIF assistance that we've received. And I hope that you are enjoying seeing kind of the fruits of that investment and watching the payments come into the coffers to help retire that indebtedness. And I can say with some certainty that these 2 operators will not have the space that I have promised them or that we have discussed, but for an investment from the city through the TIF. I know a lot of people have already seen the Hatch announcement. It's out there. You've probably seen the Roundhouse announcement. It's out there. Because of how TXMZ went, I went back to my original model of development. If you remember, whenever we came before you for Stone Cloud, I had complete architectural plans and civil engineering documents in front of me, and I spent all of my own money on that, and we had some certainty that we were going to move forward. When I came before you with TXMZ, I had some pretty pictures and an idea, and the operator was in charge of building out that space using some of my money, some of your money, and some of their money. That failed to launch. And so we're back to the original structure where we have done the civil engineering, we have done the structural engineering. I have complete plans. If you've talked to development services, you know that the permit for Roundhouse has already been issued, and I think review for Hatch permit should be completed this week. And so then you start thinking to yourselves, maybe I don't pass the but-for test. I assure you, it doesn't take very much effort to eliminate $500,000 worth of details from a project like this. And we can do it pretty quickly. But I don't think it will deliver the product or have the impact that I think downtown Stillwater deserves and what we are looking for in order to pivot this area south of 9th that really has not had a whole lot of pedestrian traffic and a lot less auto traffic since Granny's left the area and moved up to 7th Street. And so we are asking for an investment. We want to make this a killer project. One of the things that you don't see in the paperwork or the documentation is that we've secured the parking lot to the east so that the city doesn't have to address parking. And we are addressing parking because I believe that we share some responsibility in that. It comes at a cost. It's not in this package anywhere. It's just part of overall development. And I hope to integrate that into a conversation we have about 907 South Main, which is the giant albatross that's been sitting there for about 40 years. We're about halfway through using some Stillwater connections with the overall schematics of making that a hotel, restaurant, rooftop bar space. So anyway, all that being said, I will stand for questions. I hope I addressed the things that I was supposed to address, and if I didn't, I assume that you'll let me know.
Thank you, Corey. Trustees, do you have questions?
I just have a comment. I appreciate the way you approached us with this and sort of acknowledged the failure of the prior project and put that right up front. And I think you've developed a reputation for doing quality projects in this town, and I appreciate that.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I want to say thank you for starting to provide an anchor for the South Main past 9th Street that I think has needed to happen for a long time. Those buildings have a wonderful character, and I think the idea of your businesses going in there are fabulous. Roundhouse Bakery, you're right, is great, and it's the third business from Mary Main Street that's decided to go bricks and mortar, so we're even more excited about the success of Kayla and that, so thank you for what you're doing.
No, thank you. I mean, but for Kayla being successful at Mary Main and Stillwater's Farmers Market, this doesn't happen. And I don't think I said that Roundhouse is currently located in the hinterlands of Perkins, Oklahoma. And so they are super, super successful, at the same time violating the rules of location for business. You know, they are sought after. And so we're excited to have them. And those businesses that are operating currently on 10th, I think are excited to have
Yes.
them in close
Yep.
proximity. I've talked
Absolutely.
with Sarah, who might be perceived a little bit as a competitor, and she's excited to have the additional capacity in the area and the additional traffic. So my goal is, honestly, that we will tie 10th Street all the way around and give people a reason to walk from 10th on the east side of Main all the way over to Block 34 once it's completed.
Good.
I'm also really grateful for your attention to this part of our community, and I'm also really always happy to see that you're working with Oklahoma companies and Oklahoma proprietors to bring businesses here that are more local to our community. I think it's really cool to see that we're kind of organically growing within our community, or at least from within our state, with some of the folks that you're bringing in and working with. I think that's really special and not always the case when we're looking at redevelopment projects. They're very tricky and can be complicated. And I know with the current financial and cost of construction materials and all the things, it's even harder to make these deals go and to look at these projects in a way that the way that you're doing it in a creative way that makes them happen. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. We're looking, like, these tenants are quality. We're very excited about them, and I can say with relative certainty that come July of this year, actually, this space will look entirely different, and hopefully by extension that south end of Maine.
Great catalyst.
It's exactly what we wanted the TIF to do.
Yes.
Right. This is
Right.
This is exactly what we're shooting for, was redevelopment of these spaces that have been underutilized, and bringing in truly successful concepts from other places and putting them here in Stillwater and seeing those go. I noticed, I think I shared this on Instagram or somewhere, but the number of pours for the year at Stillwater Tap Room exceeded the number of pours at Stone Cloud's Oklahoma City Tap Room, their established one. And so that's been extremely successful. And you mentioned Good Little Eater. I know they've had a wonderful increase in terms of dealing with folks who have come from around the corner from the tap room. And so expanding businesses in this area is a tide that rises, lifts all ships, and just a great project. Looking forward to seeing it done. So appreciate you being here. I did have one question. I know you mentioned putting that money from the TXMZ project back into the bucket. The committee here recommended arrears. I think your ask was to get some of that not in arrears. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor. I should have learned after 10 years of having a microphone to be really careful of what I say. But during the TIF Review Committee, I made a truthful statement, and one that I'd like to take back. It stands as true. I said, I can do this project in arrears, and that is absolutely true. If the council or if the authority decides that it's appropriate that everything be in arrears, then so be it. And we have been working. My local lender is Exchange Bank, and they have been for years, and I try to stay loyal to that. You're talking about recirculating dollars in the community. We're trying to do that. And I've asked Andrea, the market president, hey, if we get awarded this money and the council and the TIF Review Committee decide to do that in arrears, can you lend on it? And they are working through the mechanisms on which to lend on it. It is challenging. Larger institutions have a public finance arm that are used to doing things like this, but I really don't want to shop it to Bank of America or one of those lenders, because I would rather, if I've got to pay interest, that I pay interest into somebody who's also supporting philanthropic endeavors in our community and other businesses. And so I say all of that to come to the end point. These monies are most helpful up front, obviously. The city of Stillwater can borrow at a lot lower rate. I just saw your interest rate up on the board, and I have to tell you, immediate jealousy. And so, I think I've had side conversations with counselors previous about, we should really consider, now that we are starting to gain some critical mass in the TIF, about issuing some bonds. That is a way, a mechanism that TIFs are financed, so that some of that money can be available. Because if you've noticed, our at least my presentations, they've gotten more aggressive as we go, because we are doing bigger and bigger projects, and the one 3 doors down from this will be massive. Before I can ever swing a hammer, I'll have $250,000 in design work. And so if it's important to the council and it's important to the committee that every single dollar, taxpayer dollar, gets dedicated to these projects, then I would ask the committee to award at least a partial sum of this money up front, because otherwise I am paying mezzanine financing. Andrea will give me the loan on this. Exchange Bank will give us the loan on it, but at a cost. And that cost is something that I take out of the overall project costs. And so it is something that doesn't go into the brick and mortar to do the thing that we're trying to do. And so my presentation to the committee was over at the time that they decided to award everything in arrears. And talking with city staff, I said, well, there'll be an opportunity to address that. So what I'm asking is that we split the difference, and that the council consider half of the money up front and half of the money in an arrears situation. That's a little bit less interest that I have to pay over the life of the loan on the project. Again, if the council decides not to do that, or if the authority decides not to do that, I would appreciate the overall investment, at least in arrears, and we'll figure it out beyond that.
A reasonable ask and a reasonable explanation. I appreciate that. And we're at the point here, and any further questions for Corey? I'll ask Brady to just come back up and kind of give us the breakdown and kind of where we are with the situation, because we're not approving a development agreement or anything at this point, correct?
That's correct. Yep. So tonight we just kind of need your guidance, a conversation of on the support of the project and the the issue of upfront funding or payment in arrears. As Corey mentioned with TXMZ, with that $340,000 that was kind of on hold for that project, coming back to the pot of that original $1 million that CETA through that resolution last year from a SUA loan of the $1 million, there was $35,000 left in that account, and then you had the $340 from TXMZ, so that brings a balance of $375,000 available for upfront funding.
Because when we approved the TXMZ project, we did award it as upfront funding at that point, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yep. And so tonight we're just looking, and I have a motion when we get to that, but just the authorizing the city manager and staff to work with Progressive Development to get into a redevelopment agreement. The term sheet we'll bring back to you, based on the conversation tonight.
Sure. Okay. Trustees, any questions for Brady in terms of the process and where we're at right now? So what's your recommendation for us, Brady?
Motion is to direct staff to enter into a redevelopment agreement with Progressive Development Corp. LLC and authorize the general manager and legal counsel to negotiate, finalize, and execute the terms of the redevelopment agreement for the restaurant and bakery at 923 South Main Street.
Trustees, I'm just going to actually move from the chair on this one because I want to make sure, at least what my motion would be to authorize staff to enter into these negotiations, and with the idea of using at least that existing money from the previous project as potentially an upfront funding for this project. So my motion would be to authorize staff to do that, including negotiating around those terms that we could use at least that portion.
And as I understood Corey's ask, he's asking for half of 525, which would be 262.5 up front.
I think he's asking for at least half is the way I heard it.
Yeah.
I think he asked for all of it
Yeah.
originally. I mean, I think, the upfront financing piece of this is clearly better for the projects, right? I mean, if we want these projects to get done, being able to fund them up front is the best way to do that. The problem becomes, well, where do we get that money up front, right? Mr. Williams mentioned actually creating bonds out of this TIF to create that funding up front. What we've done to this point is that we've used some of our available reserves and sort of loaned it to ourselves. And, we get to a point where we can't do that anymore. And that's one of the reasons we've sort of pared back and said, well, we don't really have much upfront funding anymore. My sense of this is it works better for the project. It gives us a better opportunity of this succeeding. And if we had already approved that level of funding for a project that unfortunately didn't make it through, then it to me makes sense that we would use that money again for upfront funding, and authorize the staff to have those conversations and sort of figure out what the best number is. So I hope that motion's clear.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to authorize the staff to enter into a redevelopment agreement pursuant to the staff's recommendation, including with the option of providing some upfront financing in the project. Please vote. It's approved with a vote of 5-0. Thanks, Brady, and to the staff for the work on this one. Thanks, Corey, for all of your work for the community, and looking forward to another exciting redevelopment. Okay. Any reports from the officers or the board of the of CETA? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn CETA. Please vote. With a vote of 5-0, Stillwater Economic Development Authority is now adjourned.